All right, guys, welcome back to the channel and welcome back to another podcast episode. Today, we're going to cover all the action from the weekend, in particular, the robbery in Giza, Rico Verhoeven and Oleksandr Usyk, and that very contentious ending to their blockbuster fight. We're also going to discuss the Amari Jones card. We got the breaking news. We got all the moments from the week. What's caught my eye this week in the world of combat sports? And at the very end, we're going to preview the fights next weekend. There's a massive amount of fights, a lot of events going on next week. So we're going to talk about all of that. That includes Adam Azim's boxer card. That also includes Ray Ford versus O'Shaquie Foster, which I think is a blockbuster fight. But if you all could first head down the bottom there, like the video, make sure you are subscribed to the channel, and let's talk some boxing. All right, we're going to talk about the contentious fight between Rico Verhoeven and Oleksandr Usyk last, but I do want to start at the beginning of the weekend, which was the Amari Jones versus Vincenzo Gualtieri fight. We're going to just blast through these ones. Darius Fulgham defeats Yoanki Hiruta via round 3 retirement. Not a great fight. If you didn't watch the fight, I wouldn't waste your time. There was nothing there to see. Hiruta spends 3 rounds running away, covering up, clinching onto Darius Fulgham, grabbing at the back of his head, gets about 4 or 5 warnings, gets deducted a points, keeps getting warned, and then at the very end of the 3rd round, Darius Fulgham lands an okay right hand to the body. It was the only sort of clean shot, but it wasn't a devastating shot in any way, shape, or form. Hiruta goes down, takes a knee, gets a count, gets back up, bell goes, he goes to his corner, and then retires. Like, it was a wasted evening for everybody that would have watched that fight. And for Darius Fulgham, you got to feel bad for him. I know he gets a payday. I know he gets another win on the resume, but in terms of developing, growing, showing the world your skills, building your persona in the ring, he was unable to do any of that because he didn't have an opponent there that came to fight. He had an opponent there who looked disinterested in being there and found the easiest way out of it. Robin Safar defeats Yamil Peralta by a very close split decision. And you know what? I saw many scorecards that went both ways, but the scorecards were 114, 113 in favor of Safar, 115, 112 in favor of Peralta, and 116, 111 in favor of Safar. Peralta also scored a knockdown in the 2nd round. For me, the difference in this fight and the reason that Robin Safar got the nod was it was what did you like more? Peralta was on the back foot, but he was probably landing the more cleaner, precise shots, the more, the more eye-catching shots, whereas Robin Safar had the higher activity. He was on the front foot. He was being the more aggressive physical fighter. And at the end of the day, when the judges are watching that fight, one of them saw Peralta's, clean punching and precision and making sure everything counted and landed and more powerful, dominating shots. And the other two saw Robin Safar being the aggressive fighter, being the physical, pressing the action and continuously letting his hands fly. And for me, I always prefer the guy that's on the front foot. That's why I always say, if you're going to be a back foot fighter, you have to make sure everything counts. Because when you're watching a fight, everybody likes the more entertaining fight. Everybody likes the guy that's pressing the action. Everybody likes the guy that's consistently throwing his hands. Even if they're not landing, certain points around that ring, you can't tell what is and what isn't landing. So if you're letting your hands fly, people think you're scoring shots and there's activity there. And that's the difference between the two fighters. And Robin Safar becomes the new WBC Silver Cruiserweight Champion. Whether we see a mandatory for that or not, I very much doubt it, but a good win for Robin Safar. All right, Amari Jones stops Vincenzo Gualtieri in the 3rd round. That was an IBF title eliminated. We're going to come to that. But in terms of the performance by Amari Jones, dominant, won every single round. There's only 3 of them to win, but won every single round. I thought his early investments to the body was good. Landed some good hooks, but it was that right uppercut, the one that closed the show. He landed multiple times through that fight. He obviously saw Vincenzo Gualtieri because of his high guard and the width of his guard. Every single uppercut he threw got straight through, and Vincenzo Gualtieri was even covering up with his head down, so it made the uppercut even more devastating. Got him up against the ropes, landed it flush, and he should now be in a world title fight. I mean, he's just beaten Vincenzo Gualtieri, who, he's got some good wins, but nothing that you'd really look at and say, wow, that's a great win. His biggest fight was against Yanibek Alam-Kanali, and he gets stopped in the 7th or 8th round. But for Amari Jones, to do it within 3 rounds is the impressive part. And getting this win over Vincenzo Gualtieri, IBF title eliminator, the top 2 spots in the IBF, because the title is vacant, the top 2 spots is number 3, Aaron McKenna, and number 2, Etanoza Olaha. Which one of those he gets, I'd probably swing towards Aaron McKenna because that's the one they probably can make more money off. And to be honest with you, I actually think he's the better one in the division. it's not a great middleweight division right now. It isn't. It is such a poor division in boxing right now. It takes nothing away from how good Amari Jones is or how good Aaron McKenna is. It's just a very poor division. I don't think Amari Jones in another division would be quite there yet to be fighting for a world title. I think he's got a lot of talent. I just don't know whether the experience is there to be a top tier middleweight quite yet. But, you know what, he could be in a world title fight, and I give him every chance against Aaron McKenna. Like I said, it's not a packed division. It's not one that there's absolutely killers everywhere. So Amari Jones very well could become a world champion in his next fight. All right, the Oleksandr Usyk card. We're going to start at the bottom. Benjamin Mendes Tani defeats Daniel Lapin. This was the first fight of the night. Daniel Lapin, I think, quite a huge favorite in this fight. Definitely a favorite in the fight. And you know what? I looked at the weigh-ins, and you saw Daniel Lapin standing there against Tani. I believe Tani was dropping down a division, but Lapin was so big compared to him. I think there was 6 inches in between these two fighters. And I thought Daniel Lapin, we know what team he works with. We know how big the hype is around this guy. He's still early doors in his career, 13 wins in his career. Coming into this fight, I fully expected him to beat Benjamin Mendy, but Benjamin Mendy ripped through him. 3 knockdowns in the 4th round and gets rid of him. A brilliant performance by Benjamin Mendy, and now some massive question marks over Daniel Lapin. I know some people talk about that Daniel Lapin fight against Lewis Edmondson and the result in that one, but there was no doubts in this one. A great performance by Benjamin Mendes Tani. Mizuki Hiruta defeats Mai Soliman via unanimous decision, 99-91, 98-92, 98-92. Mai Soliman had one good round, and that was the 8th round. She lands a clean right hand. And you thought, all right, you know, we know Mai Soliman's got the power. She did this in her last fight. She was losing every single round, but finds a finish in the 7th. Could Mai Soliman find that killer punch? But no, she couldn't. And like I said in my preview, I fully expected Mizuki Hiruta to win this by a landslide unanimous decision victory. That's exactly what she did. She's just way too skillful for Mai Soliman. A great boxer, and this might be her best performance. I thought it was a very complete performance by Mizuki Hiruta. Her speed, her accuracy, even the explosiveness from her. And I think she's got one of the best gas tanks as well, because she did not quieten over the course of those 10 rounds. Like, there was no slowing down. The 9th and the 10th round, even after she sort of got wobbled from Mai Soliman, she came back on strong. And for me, she won the 9th and the 10th round. So very, very impressive performance by Mizuki Hiruta. All right, this one here, guys. You know, I think this was the biggest upset on the card. I couldn't believe what we saw. I did not hear anyone, all right? So let's not go changing stories. I did not hear anyone coming into this fight between Frank Sanchez and Richard Torres Jr. saying Frank Sanchez was going to win it. Not one person. Not casual fans, not hardcore fans, not pundits, not former boxers. Nobody came into this fight thinking Frank Sanchez was actually going to beat Richard Torres Jr. For me, I personally thought Richard Torres Jr. was going to get a decision. I didn't think he'd stop Frank Sanchez, but I just thought he'd outwork him over the course of the 10 rounds, providing he got out of the early few rounds. But guess what, guys? He did not. Round 2, you know what? We saw, a round and a half of action. And for me, Richard Torres Jr. won that. Minute and a half. We saw a round and a half of action. And for me, Richard Torres Jr. won every second of that minute. We saw a round and a half of action. And for me, Richard Torres Jr. won every single second of it up until that final killer blow where Frank Sanchez lands a clean right uppercut on Richard Torres. Richard Torres Jr. putting his head in an awful position, trying to attack Frank Sanchez. I mean, he stepped on the inside, head straight down the line, basically bent over, and it was right there to be hit. Frank Sanchez lands a clean right hand, knocks him out cold, and Frank Sanchez, all of a sudden, he went from, a boogeyman to losing to Ajit Caballero the way he did, a long time out through injuries, comes back, doesn't have much of a chance against Richard Torres Jr., and it's just shot his stocks up way high, because Richard Torres Jr., for me, was a top 10 heavyweight. I thought the promise that he had, I put him in that same category of Moses Atauma, Huni, Teramawan. I was like, this is one of the guys that we're going to say is the future of heavyweight boxing, because he has all the talent, he has the amateur pedigree, but man, his size, that is now a definite problem. His punch resistance, that's a problem. I mean, I've been seeing clips everywhere now, following this loss of him getting hurt in amateur fights. I saw one of him against Jalalov where he got knocked out back in 2019. So for Richard Torres Jr., he's got definitely all the skill, but it's almost now a question of, does he have the chin to mix it with the top heavyweights? Does he have the size to mix it with the top heavyweights? Because for me, he was very, very small on the scales, and I don't see this guy getting small enough to be fighting Bridgerweight or Cruiserweight, and there's really no money to be fought at Bridgerweight, so you want to be dropping down to Cruiserweight. I just don't see him getting that small, and what are you going to compromise trying to get that small? But look, Richard Torres Jr., like I say, he has got all the talent, but that performance, it wasn't great. And I said in my preview, I said, Richard Torres Jr. has one big problem, and that is overcommitting and getting basically too excited and too aggressive early in the fight. And you get found out because you're open in those early few rounds. And in heavyweight boxing, when you're up against someone like Frank Sanchez, who does have the speed, does have the precision, and definitely has the power early on in a fight, he got caught out. And Frank Sanchez, like I said, raised his stocks a million miles in that fight. And if you're Frank Sanchez, you're in a great position now. That was an IBF title eliminator. You can look around and you can say, all right, I am a top heavyweight again. I've just knocked off one of your top prospects. That works in two ways. All right, that works one way. All right, you've regained your stock. People are invested in seeing you fight. People want to see you fight. The other side of that coin is other fighters don't want to fight you. They would have just saw that and said, Richard Torres Jr., 27 years of age, coming into his prime, high hopes for this kid. And Frank Sanchez has just knocked him out in the second round. So it works both ways for Frank Sanchez. I am now very interested to see him fight again. Whereas I expected Richard Torres Jr. to beat Frank Sanchez over a decision. And then, basically nobody cares what you do, Frank Sanchez. And all of a sudden it's, all right, what's next for Frank Sanchez? Who can we see him fight next? Jack Catterall defeats Shakhram Giyasov via unanimous decision, 118 to 109, 119 to 108, 116 to 111. I was shocked by how poor Shakhram was in that fight. Absolutely astounded by how poor he was. We know he's an amateur fighter. He's a silver medalist in the Olympics, undefeated as a professional, building his professional resume, getting better and better wins, very, very aggressive on the front foot, loves to throw some body punches, loves to throw a left hook, can find that finish, is a big hitter up against Jack Catterall, who, he's had his ups and downs in his career, but he's very experienced. And, we all knew this was going to be a very highly competitive fight, but I just thought Shakhram Giyasov's activity was what's going to win him this fight because Jack Catterall likes to fight on the back foot. But Jack Catterall came in with a pitch-perfect performance, game plan on that back foot. And you know what the killing punch was in this fight? You know what the killing combination in this fight was? It was a 1-2. It was a simple 1-2 off the back foot. And every single time it went straight through and landed on Shakhram Giyasov. It dropped him early in that fight in the first round. And it was smooth sailing from there to the end. Jack Catterall really had nothing to worry about. He was controlling every single round, even off the back foot, picking off Shakhram Giyasov at will, moving around the ring, getting away from Shakhram Giyasov, controlling the distance. A perfect performance via Jack Catterall, and becomes the WBA regular world champion and could very well be promoted to an outright champion depending on whatever the fuck Rolly Romero is doing. He's saying that he's retired. The WBA, for some reason, didn't make one of these two guys already fight Rolly Romero. I don't know what's going on there, but Jack Catterall, WBA regular champion, a great performance. And it was one of those performances where you say, all right, who in the top 5 can Jack Catterall not go and actually compete with? Who in welterweight can Jack Catterall not go and test? Because I think Jack Catterall now just proved that he can just about run it with everybody in the division. Not necessarily saying he can go and beat Devin Haney, but we know for a fact that he's not going to get blasted away from him. We know for a fact he could run it with Ryan Garcia. A great performance there from Jack Catterall. A million questions about Giyasov. I got the CompuBox stats right here, and this almost tells you the whole entire story because Jack Catterall landed 219 punches, 76 of those to the body out of 551. This compared to the 78 punches landed, 21 to the body, and 366 thrown overall of Shakhram Giyasov. So almost 200 punches more thrown from Jack Catterall. 150 landed more from Jack Catterall, 50 more to the body from Jack Catterall. And Jack Catterall's the guy that's the counterpuncher on the back foot against Shakhram Giyasov, the guy that's supposed to be the active front forward fighter. A million questions and zero answers about what we saw from Shakhram Giyasov. It was bad. He just looked unmotivated. He looked half the time like he didn't want to be there. He refused to let his hands fly. Was that just a reflection of that clean punch in the first round from Jack Catterall, and Giyasov says, I can't take this power. This is too much for me. If I let my hands fly, I'm just going to get picked apart. I've got to cover up and hope for something. And that's almost what he looked like he did. Jack Catterall, brilliant performance. All right, Hamzah Sheeraz defeating Alem Begic via round 2 KO, becoming the WBO super middleweight champion. Brilliant performance by Hamzah Sheeraz. I said in my preview I'd be shocked, I'd be astounded if Alem Begic saw the second half of this fight. And it's basically the fight that we saw. We knew Alem Begic at 39 years of age has nowhere near the experience against somebody like Hamzah Sheeraz. He's not very quick, he's not very big, he's not very powerful, he's not overly skillful. He's a okay Eastern European fighter. And Hamzah Sheeraz, unfortunately for you, that's the guy that you had to go in there and face for your world title. Look, you're not going to be complaining. You went and won a world title. It couldn't have been much easier. Originally, this fight was supposed to be Diego Pacheco, and I would have loved to have seen that fight. But Diego Pacheco ducked that fight. We all know that. So Hamzah Sheeraz had to take on Alem Begic, and he went in there and he did what he had to do. Very, very aggressive. Went in there and ripped him apart with hooks. Just ran through Alem Begic. Alem Begic barely threw a punch. Could not control or contain Hamzah Sheeraz at all. Every time he let his hands fly, he was just going to get hit with something big from Hamzah Sheeraz. And I love this nastiness from Hamzah Sheeraz. In this new division, working under Andy Lee, he throws every punch with conviction. He wants to get you out of there with every single punch, but he makes sure he throws them and he lands them. He doesn't overcommit to punches that are going to miss. He doesn't throw when he knows he can't land. He measures everything up, and then he throws with conviction. And those big, long levers, throwing these hooks in close, devastating from Hamzah Sheeraz. And that was the type of performance backed up from that Edgar Berlanga one that you look at him saying, he's just fought 7 rounds against Edgar Berlanga and in a world title fight, and he's beaten them both by knockout and won a world title. New WBO champion. He is a force to be reckoned with. And I want to see some unifications. I want to see him up against the winner of Canelo versus Mbili. But I want to caveat with that saying, Canelo and Mbili are going to fight in September. He's just won this fight with nothing, all right? It's May right now. He could fight next week. Hamzah Sheeraz can't wait until Canelo and Mbili fight and then pick the winner of that and then go and fight him. He's already nearly taken off 12 months. It was, July last year that he fought Edgar Berlanga, beat him in 5 rounds. You've now won this fight in 2 rounds. We can't be looking at 6 or 7, 8, 9 months out of action again. We have to see Hamzah Sheeraz. It won't be against the big name that we probably want to see. But if we can see a fight in between, right, whilst we're waiting for that big fight, no one's going to care. But if we wait 12 months and see an okay fight in 12 months because you can't get the Canelo and Mbili fight, that's when the problems start to come. So for Hamzah Sheeraz activity, let's see you in Britain in a few months' time. I'm talking 2 or 3 months' time. Let's see you in Britain up against an okay name, a decent name, a contender in and around super middleweight, hopefully. And let's see you tested. And then guess what? I want to see these big ones, unifications up against the top tier. Because when we talk about super middleweight, the division is absolutely stacked from top to tail. Lester Martinez, Christian Mbili, Canelo Alvarez, Diego Pacheco, Beck the Bully. I'm probably missing a whole heap. Jaime Munguia, that's just become a world champion. It has to be one of these names. All right? I want to see him because I think Hamzah Sheeraz can run it with any of those guys. And we just saw Jaime Munguia have his best performance of his career. Hamzah Sheeraz is destroying everybody. Let's see one of these. All right, let's talk about Oleksandr Usyk and Rico Verhoeven and what a fucking mess that fight was. All right? From every, they've just got to stop doing it. They do. All right? Every time we see a boxer take on an MMA guy, it makes boxing look like a worse sport. It does. Every single time. Not one time have I seen these two sports go head to head and boxing come out on the better side of it. It always works in favor of the MMA guys, and I've got no problem with that. The boxers want to do it, fine, but nothing in this fight worked out for the boxing world, all right? Because even though Oleksandr Usyk got the win, no one cares about that. All that I've seen over the past 24 hours is boxing is rigged, controversy, robbed, couldn't let an MMA guy beat a boxer guy. We've seen this before. Tyson Fury versus Francis Ngannou. Francis Ngannou was robbed there. This guy was robbed here. It just does no favors to the sport of boxing. And on top of that, it wasn't even a fight that nobody wanted to see this. All right, coming into this, nobody cared who Rico Verhoeven was in the boxing world. No one cared. Nobody wanted to see it. There was no hype for it. They had to try and sell it the best that they could. But no one cared. Let's be honest. No one cared. which sounds harsh to Rico Verhoeven. I don't mean it that way. If you're a combat sports athlete, if you're an MMA fighter, if you're a fan of either of those sports, you know what a legend Rico Verhoeven is. And I'm not putting that down in any way, shape, or form. But in terms of this fight, it does more harm to the sport than it does good. The fact that I'm now seeing that those type of statements, it just brings down our sport, all right? It makes our sport look like that sort of rigged, all right? The boxing world will pay off and do anything that they can to get the result that they want, and that's not what I want to be saying now. But let's talk about this fight, because Rico Verhoeven, I mean, he silenced every single critic, and what a performance from him. I mean, going into the 11th round, I had it 3 rounds to Oleksandr Usyk, the rest to Rico Verhoeven, and I thought that was very, very fair. I actually thought it was overly generous to Oleksandr Usyk. I've watched the fight again. I really can't justify any other rounds going to Oleksandr Usyk. I think Rico Verhoeven was far the better fighter. I think he was on the front foot more. I thought he's been more aggressive, being more physical, landing the better punches. So Oleksandr Usyk, I think the big talking point's about him, isn't it? Because Rico Verhoeven, he surprised everybody. All right, we all underrated what he was going to do in that ring, and fucking hell, what a performance. But let's talk about Oleksandr Usyk, because this performance from him, it wasn't good. It wasn't good at all, and you can't tell me otherwise. Oleksandr Usyk, I don't know whether he undertrained, came in overweight, but something went wrong by Oleksandr Usyk, either physically or mentally in this fight, because he looked a shell of the man he is. Is it the age thing? Is it simply he's reached his limit? Is it a time where we've seen Oleksandr Usyk reach his limit? He has been in enough fights, he's been in enough wars, he's been in enough training camps. The body is starting to shut down on him. I'm not sure which one of those things it is, but we did not see an Oleksandr Usyk on the weekend. He looked slow, he looked sluggard, he looked out of ideas, looked like he was walking in mud. Unbelievably poor performance from Oleksandr Usyk, but you know what? You talk about that and you say how shit he was and how shit he looked. I think it just demonstrates what a great fighter he is, because even with all of that, even with being so far behind, he found a way to win that fight. He found a way to drop Rico Verhoeven. He found a way to get him out of there. Say what you will about whether it should have been stopped or not. Oleksandr Usyk did his job. Oleksandr Usyk stopped Rico Verhoeven. Oleksandr Usyk got that knockdown. That's all he had to do at the end of the day. He had to win that fight. And he found a way on his worst night that I've ever seen him fight to find a way to win that fight. So for Oleksandr Usyk, you get out of jail, all right? But if that's the level of Oleksandr Usyk we're seeing from now, if this is Oleksandr Usyk, if this is what we expect from him, you hang those gloves up right now, man. I don't want to see Oleksandr Usyk in there with any of the top contenders. I don't really want to see him in there with anybody if that's the level, because Ajit Kabayel will destroy that man, in my opinion. Oleksandr Usyk, so poor. And that sounds disrespectful, and it sounds like I'm taking credit away from Rico Verhoeven. Rico Verhoeven offered a game plan, offered a strategy, offered an unorthodox look to Oleksandr Usyk, and caused him a whole heap of pressure with his punches, with his precision, with his physicality. And I don't want to take anything away from Rico Verhoeven. He earned the 12th round. He earned being ahead by all of those rounds. He fought excellently, and he blasted everybody away with how good he actually looked in that fight. So take nothing away from Rico Verhoeven. I think if Rico Verhoeven wants to have any more boxing fights, nobody would question his ability. And I think you could put Rico Verhoeven in with any top 10 boxer right now and say Rico Verhoeven has a very, very good chance of winning this fight. He has a very, very good chance of making this competitive, because you saw it. You saw that he has the ability to do that. All right, very unorthodox, very odd. Him and Peter Fury put together a perfect game plan for taking on Oleksandr Usyk. And now we get onto the controversy. Rico Verhoeven being robbed of an opportunity. And I make sure that word's in there. Opportunity. Everybody's saying that he's been robbed. I think he's been robbed of an opportunity. This wasn't a scorecard where he was up by a million miles. They went to the scorecards and he lost. That's a robbery. Why I say he's robbed of an opportunity is because that fight shouldn't have been stopped in the 11th, and they still had 1 round to go. So he had an opportunity there to turn the tide, to stop Oleksandr Usyk, to win that round by a knockdown and win the fight. He wasn't robbed of a decision. So I think the opportunity word is in there, because for me personally, I think Oleksandr Usyk comes out and knocks him out. I think he stops Rico Verhoeven in the 12th, irregardless. And if he doesn't, I don't think Rico Verhoeven was going to stop Oleksandr Usyk. I think we go to his scorecards, and if my maths is correct, The official scorecards through 10 rounds were 95, 95, 96, 94, 95, 95, which means going one more round, Oleksandr Usyk would have been ahead by 2 points on 2 scorecards and 1 point on 1 scorecard, which means Rico Verhoeven needed at least a knockdown to get a draw in that fight. So for me, you can't say that he was robbed of the win, but he was definitely robbed of an opportunity because, I say that I don't believe Rico Verhoeven would have came out and knocked out Oleksandr Usyk, but Rico Verhoeven is a very, very prestigious combat athlete. And if you watched any of his performances at Glory, he had a fight against Levi Richters where he gets knocked down, gets up, he looks absolutely no shape to continue that fight, turns the tables and knocks out Levi Richters. He does the same thing to Ben Sadiq. So to say that he's down and out of that fight is completely wrong. He is an experienced fighter. And the fact that those last few punches, there was about 3 or 4 punches that came from Oleksandr Usyk on Rico Verhoeven following the bell, and the ref calls off the action after the bell. A fucking piss poor decision. And that's why I say he's been robbed of an opportunity, because I do feel very bad for Rico Verhoeven because he earned that opportunity to go to the 12th round. He earned that opportunity to try and stop Oleksandr Usyk or go to a scorecards. And although the scorecards, by the way that the officials have done them, for me, is a massive fucking robbery as well, because I've watched that fight twice now. And when you watch it, I gave Oleksandr Usyk rounds 3, 4, and 10, and I can't justify giving him any other round. For me personally, I don't think he deserved any other rounds. So the fact that the scorecards gave so much credit to Oleksandr Usyk is a fuck around as well. The referee stopping it was a stupid fucking decision, and the scorecards for me was a stupid fucking decision. And that's what I mean about that whole fight has just put a dampener on the way boxing's perceived by the public. And we should never be in a position where that happens. Let's get off the negatives and talk about what's next for both fighters. Let's talk about Rico Verhoeven. Rico Verhoeven is going to appeal the fight, as you can see on the screen. He is appealing the decision of that fight. And this is something that I didn't really like Turki Al-Sheikh saying after the fight. Ajit Kabayel storms the ring, gets his face off, calls for the fight. That's the next fight. He's the WBC. No question about it. That's the next fight for Usyk. It's Usyk versus Ajit Kabayel. I don't care if it's in Germany. I don't care if it's in fucking Switzerland. I don't care if it's in Antarctica. That's the next fight for both of them. Turki Al-Sheikh, all he wanted to talk about was a rematch between him and Rico in Holland. That's all he kept saying. That's what he kept saying, and that's what he kept talking about. No, it's a rematch, 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 rematch. No matter how many times Ajit Kabayel said it, no matter how many times Adi Oladipo asked, it was Rico next. Rico rematch. I don't want to see this fucking shit fight again. All right? I don't want to see it. For 2 reasons. Number one, this event, I didn't want to see the first one. Look, I'll give credit to Rico. I think he's got every chance in the second fight. And it's not about the competitive of the fight. It's about the fact that Ajit Kabayel has earned the opportunity to fight for the world title. And that's what he should be doing. It should be Ajit Kabayel next. And he's the reason, right? It's not because I don't like Rico. It's not because I don't like Usyk. It's not because I don't like Turkey. It's not because I don't like any of that. It's because Ajit Kabayel has already earned this opportunity. And he is just being pushed and pushed and pushed aside. Which I think is fucking disgraceful. I got my pound for pound list up there. Following that Usyk win, for me, I still keep him at number 1. I posted it all over social media and I got mixed responses about it. For me, Usyk is still number 1. The reason I say Usyk's number 1 is because he didn't lose the fight. What do you want me to do? For me, he is the pound for pound number 1 in the world. He didn't lose the fight. It was unconventional. It wasn't the Usyk we expected to see. But I didn't see people dropping Inoue because he got dropped by Cardenas in that fight. Inoue still knocked him out, and that's all that anybody cares about. So, for me, by that maths, if we're not going to deduct points from Inoue from getting dropped from a lesser fighter, Usyk shouldn't be dropped points either. Look, I don't care. If you already had Usyk as your number 2 and Inoue first, I get that completely. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying Inoue doesn't deserve the first spot. For me, Usyk coming into the weekend was number 1, and he didn't do anything in that fight for me to say he doesn't deserve to be number 1. If Rico got the win, I think I would have dropped Usyk out of my top 3. That's how close we're talking here. So don't get me wrong. I think Usyk's number 1, but that's a lot of credit in the bank. That's why he's number 1. And the reason I actually put him above Inoue, if you want to know why I put him above Inoue, it's because Inoue fights in a division where he's fighting people that's the same weight as him. Oleksandr Usyk fights people that are 30, 40, 50 pounds heavier than him. And that's, for me, the difference in poundage. Pound for pound, how skillful are you? Well, pound for pound, he's beating guys that are 40, 50 pounds heavier than him. And that's for me why I put him number 1. All right, let's get into some breaking news. David Nyika versus Floyd Masson. That's an IBF title eliminator happening August 8th in Auckland. Zlatan Ibrahimovic is going to be taking on Tyson Fury, apparently, August 1st in Dublin, Ireland. Zlatan posted this all over his social media. If that's the fight we're going to see, it's another one of these things of Oleksandr Usyk versus Rico Verhoeven. We don't fucking want to see it. Why Tyson Fury would want that fight, I'm not really sure. It's not as though Zlatan's going to give you rounds in preparation for AJ. Realistically, you expected Tyson Fury to take on Zlatan first and then probably take on Arslanbek Makhmudov. But for me, I don't want to see it. I don't. It's not even like Zlatan Ibrahimovic is a combat sports athlete. We're now talking about him taking on a Swedish footballer. The WBO stated that Dmitry Bivol versus Callum Smith will be ordered following the Michael Eifert fight this weekend. Are we going to see Dmitry Bivol versus Beterbiev 3? Is that fight going to happen? Or is that fight going to happen with no belts? Because it looks like it's starting to head that way of, let's just see Bivol versus Beterbiev. Who cares if there's no belts on it? Because if we're getting all these mandatories, it's never going to happen. This one against Michael Eifert's a mandatory. That WBO one is a mandatory. Might just need to see it for no belts. Canelo Alvarez versus Billy is official for September 12th in Riyadh season. The WBA ordered Tank Davis to take on Floyd Schofield. They've got a 30-day time slot to reach a deal. If not, it goes to purse bids. I think that fight's a very good fight. I'm glad the WBA are finally taking some sort of action. For me, and for a lot of people, they probably agree with me. Tank probably should have already been stripped. The fact that Tank still has that belt is questionable at best. But for Tank Davis, just take a fight. Floyd Schofield is a very, very good youngster, and I think he can give Tank a handful. Tank is an odd character right now. I just don't know what to expect from him in the ring. Floyd Schofield, he's got absolutely nothing to lose. But most of all, I'm just happy the WBA are doing something about that belt. According to rumors from the weekend, obviously a lot of talking happens over the weekend. A lot of people talking to promoters, agents, Turki Al-Sheikh, discussions between fighters and promoters. Opetaia and Turki Al-Sheikh have had chats, and the plan that I'm hearing is Opetaia is hoping to take the Noel Mikhailian fight, and then hopefully later this year to early next year take the David Benavidez fight. Now, the reason I think he wants to take the Noel Mikhailian fight is because David Benavidez continuously says, why would I take a fight against Opetaia? He's got nothing to offer me. Some people will say that's a fucking cop-out. For me, that's fair. Why would David Benavidez take a fight against Opetaia where there's no belts on the line? You know, there's a fucking huge mess with Zuffa boxing. I mean, I heard on the weekend Oscar De La Hoya talking about Ryan Garcia and Conor Benn, and he says people think it's easy just to make this fight because Ryan Garcia wants it or Conor Benn wants it. Well, when working with Zuffa Boxing, there's more to consider because Zuffa Boxing have an exclusive deal with Paramount Plus. Well, here over at Golden Boy, we have Ryan Garcia signed to a deal with Golden Boy and DAZN Boxing. So, you know, the first thing is, where is it going to be aired? And I think stuff like that is important when talking about these fights because it's not as simple as both guys want to fight. Let's set that up because Dana White will be sat there and says, well, I have an exclusive deal with Paramount. My Zuffa boxers have to be fighting on Paramount. And then you got the other guys say, well, ours is exclusive to DAZN. This is where the fuck around starts to happen. And it's as simple for us to say, I want to see that fight. They're ducking each other. Why aren't they taking that fight? But I want as much as you guys to see Opetaia versus David Benavidez. I do. But it is hard. Opetaia's lost his IBF belt. He's with Zuffa Boxing. There's a civil war between promoters. I think it's a tough ask, man. I think it's a very tough ask. I think we see Opetaia possibly take on Noel Mikhailian. I'm not sure why we haven't already seen that. And I think that's another problem. I mean, we saw Opetaia face off Noel Mikhailian months ago. And when we haven't heard any more news on it. So this is a big problem with Zuffa Boxing. All right, guys, it is time for Moments of the Week. What has caught my eye in the world of combat sports? And we've got to start at the Pyramids of Giza. What a spectacle in front of the pyramids. That whole event, I mean, it was a beautiful sight for boxing. The main event, for me, didn't deliver. But that event in itself is a great look for boxing. A new place to go. Great scenic views. It just highlights how great our sport of boxing is. And guess what? The stars were out at the Pyramids of Giza. We saw guys like Bud and Opetaia wrestling in front of the Pyramids of Giza. We saw Canelo and GGG sat together. You know, rivals becoming friends. We saw Anthony Joshua. We saw Usyk. We saw all of the superstars of our sports gathered around in one place. And with that backdrop, with that scenic backdrop of Egypt, a beautiful, beautiful sight for boxing. Benjamin Mendes Tani, although getting an upset victory, tries to celebrate a little bit too hard with some backflips and ends up falling on his face. Carnage at the PFL in Brussels when the ceremonial face-off between Hamzah Abayev and Luka Poklit ends up in a brawl. The next day, Hamzah Abayev sleeps Poklit in the very, very first round. Carnage over there in the PFL. Super Hot Fire knocks out Ray J in the second round at brand risk number 14. Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney seated together at Rico Verhoeven versus Oleksandr Usyk. Turki Al-Sheikh telling them, wait until it's your turn to get into the ring. All right, it's time to preview next weekend's action. There's a whole heap of boxing. We're not going to talk too in depth about it. This video is already very, very long. But Stephanie Hahn versus Holly Holm 2. The first fight, obviously, it ended in round 7 due to head clashes. For me, Stephanie Hahn was winning that fight by a mile, and I think she just would have cruised on to get the victory. So Holly Holm needs to switch it up a lot to get a victory here because, she looked poor in that fight. Stephanie Hahn was all over her. Amanda Serrano versus Cheyenne Hansen. That's for the WBA and WBO women's featherweight titles. Obviously, both of those by Serrano. I thought Serrano would have been better in her last fight against Tejas. She wins by decision like 97-93, but I thought she was going to absolutely dominate her. And Cheyenne Hansen, I expect Serrano to either stop this girl or, complete shutout. If not, I'm starting to think Amanda Serrano is, well, all right, we've seen the best of Amanda Serrano, and now we're seeing the back end of her career, which we basically are. But, after those fights against Katie Taylor, she was so competitive in all of those fights. These people she needs to be getting rid of, or like I said, it's really going downhill for her. I know she's winning the fights, but she's so much better than these people, and I want to see some knockouts. I want to see some landslide victories. Desley Robinson versus Mary Spencer for Robinson's unified women's middleweight titles. I expect Desley Robinson to win. It won't be easy, but I do expect her to win, and I hope that we can see her after this fight have an undisputed fight with Kay Scott. Obviously, Kay Scott, another Australian, and she has the other 2 belts. Lourdes Juarez versus Yokasta Vale. This is for Juarez's WBC women's junior flyweight title. I don't expect. I think this will be a very, very close fight, but I'm picking Vale to win it. I think it'll be very, very close. And once again, I hope the winner of this fight goes and takes on Evelyn Bermudez. She has the other 3 titles, so hopefully an undisputed bout for the winner of this fight. And like I said, I think it's actually going to be Vale. All right, we go to Russia. Dmitry Bivol versus Michael Eifert. Look, Eifert is 13-5-1. He's fought domestic European talent. Dmitry Bivol, this is unfortunate that you've had to take this fight. It is a mandatory, but Dmitry Bivol will wipe the floor with this guy. I don't think it'll be very competitive at all. Dmitry Bivol is the top of the tree. This fight will be piss easy in my opinion. All right, we head to London for the boxer card. Adam Azim versus Steve Claggett. A very experienced Steve Claggett. This is going to be his 51st professional fight. He's been around since 2008. Adam Azim, this will be his 15th fight. Some good wins. He's on a 5 knockout streak now, including that win over Kurt Scooby and Sergey Lipinets. I think Adam Azim will win it. I don't think it'll be easy, but I'd be surprised if it went any other way than an Adam Azim victory. I wouldn't be surprised if it goes to a decision. Sometimes it's harder to get these experienced guys out of there, but I'm hearing it's 12 rounds. So Adam Azim, he's a very, very powerful hitter. Don't be surprised at the age and the experience that Steve Claggett has. It might just be too much. The youthful exuberance might just be too much. Fran Hennessy versus Aurora De Percio. 2 very young fighters here, both 21 years of age. Fran Hennessy escaped, with a very close victory over Ellie Boutel last time out. Very similar records as well, 8-0 versus 8-1. I expect Fran Hennessy to win this fight. They're not going to put Fran Hennessy in any fight that you can't win at the moment. This is the one I'm most looking forward to this weekend. O'Shaquie Foster versus Ray Ford. After what I saw O'Shaquie Foster do to Stephen Fulton, that was by far his career performance. The way he shut out Stephen Fulton, a former world champion in his own right, I was so surprised that O'Shaquie Foster did that to him. I thought the distance control, the range, and the power hitting as well. A brilliant performance from O'Shaquie Foster. For me, his best performance of his career. But he's up against Ray Ford. Ray Ford is one of the best young American fighters in the world right now. I know there's a loss to Nick Ball. That was a very close loss. I think it was a split decision or a majority decision loss. It probably looks worse now that Nick Ball was destroyed by Brendan Figueroa, but a very competitive fight. Ray Ford since then has had 3 wins, including Thomas Matiche, and his last fight against Abraham Nova, which was supposed to be Anthony Kakache. That would have been a much better fight to have watched. Anthony Kakache versus Ray Ford. Abraham Nova, I don't really put him up the top, but this fight here, I can't split the two. We might even do a preview and a look ahead to this fight later in the week. I think if O'Shaquie Foster performs the way he did against Stephen Fulton, I think Foster wins. I think he's the more experienced. I think that performance, it was just an unbelievable performance, but it's going to be close. If O'Shaquie Foster performs like that, he'll win it, but it'll be like, 116, 117 at most, but I think around that 116, 115 type of area. It'll be very, very competitive, but Foster needs to be at his very best to beat Ray Ford. All right, guys, thank you for being a part of the podcast. Make sure you head down the bottom there, leave all your thoughts in the comments below, like the video, subscribe to the channel. Like I said, I might try and get some more videos out during this week. We'll see what news comes out. If not, we might do an O'Shaquie Foster versus Ray Ford. I know I've got some work on, quite a lot of work on this week, so we'll have to wait and see. But thank you all for watching. Like, subscribe, and I'm out of here, guys. See ya.